You keep pretending that house is some private sanctuary no one else can touch. My parents have been patient for years, but even they see how selfish you've become. Sophia sat with me for 2 hours last week and laid out every option. She said signing it over is the only way to stop the fighting. You act like the rest of us don't exist unless we agree with you. Sign the papers by tomorrow night, or I walk away and let the family handle what you clearly can. Hi, my name is Lauren Bennett. I am 28 years old. The words landed like ice water down my spine. I stood in the middle of our small kitchen in the house I had inherited 3 years earlier, the one my mother had worked 2 jobs to keep. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He never did. He delivered every sentence in that same flat, reasonable tone he used when he explained why we couldn't afford the vacation I had already paid for. I set the grocery bag on the counter without looking at him. My hand stayed steady. Inside, something sharp and cold clicked into place. Sophia Grant, my best friend since we were 15, had been sitting in our living room, with my husband helping him figure out how to take the only stable thing I still owned. I asked one question: when did you two start meeting without me? He gave a short, impatient sigh, the kind that said I was being difficult again. It doesn't matter when. What matters is that everyone agrees this house should stay in the family name. Your name on the deed makes things complicated for taxes and for my parents' peace of mind. I nodded once. I did not argue. I did not cry. I walked past him, picked up my phone from the table, and went out the back door onto the porch. The evening air in our small Texas town was still warm. I sat on the top step and opened the banking app I had not checked in weeks. The joint account we shared showed a transfer I had not authorized. $5,000 moved 2 days earlier to an account I did not recognize. I scrolled further. Another transfer the week before. Small amounts spaced out, nothing that would trigger an alert. I closed the app. My breathing stayed even. I had learned years ago that showing panic only gave Daniel more to use against me. The next morning, I drove to the small accounting office where I worked part-time, helping local businesses with their books. Ryan Cooper, the owner, was already at his desk when I arrived. He was in his late 40s, quiet, and had never once asked me personal questions. I told him I needed help reviewing some old family documents. He nodded and said he would block out time after lunch. By noon, I had pulled every folder from the back of the hall closet at home. Most were ordinary old tax returns, the deed to the house, my mother's will. At the very bottom of the box, I found a thin manila envelope I had not opened in years. Inside was a single typed page dated 6 years earlier, signed by my mother and witnessed by a local notary. It stated that the house and the small adjoining land were to remain solely in my name, with no joint ownership or transfer permitted without my written consent. My mother had added one extra sentence in her own handwriting: "This is not for anyone else to decide." I read it twice. Then I photographed every page with my phone and sent the images to Ryan. He called me 40 minutes later. "Lauren, this document is still valid. It was never superseded. If anyone is trying to pressure you into signing it away, that's coercion. Bring everything in tomorrow. We'll go through it line by line." I thanked him and ended the call. My hands were cold again, but my mind stayed clear. That evening, Daniel came home later than usual. He dropped his keys on the counter and looked at me with the same calm expression. "Did you think about what we discussed?" I met his eyes. "I thought about it." He waited. When I said nothing else, the calm cracked just slightly. "Sophia's coming over tomorrow to go over the paperwork with us. She's already drawn it up. It will be simple." I nodded again. "I'll be here." He studied me for a moment, then turned and went upstairs. I stayed in the kitchen until the house was quiet. Then I walked back out to the porch, sat on the same step, and opened the email account I rarely used. I searched for Sophia's name. Dozens of messages appeared between her and Daniel, stretching back 8 months. Most were short. One from 4 months earlier read, "She won't notice the small transfers if we keep them under the radar. Once the deed is in both names, we can move faster." Another from Sophia. "Her mother's old will is the only real obstacle. Once that's handled, the rest is paperwork." I read every message without moving. The cold feeling in my chest spread, but it did not become panic. It became something harder and quieter. I forwarded the entire thread to Ryan Cooper with one line: "Can you meet first thing in the morning?" He replied, "Within minutes, I'll be at the office at 7. Bring the original document." I closed the laptop. The porch boards creaked under my weight as I stood. Inside the house, Daniel was already asleep. I did not go upstairs. I stayed on the porch until the sky began to lighten, watching the small town wake up around me. The next morning, I met Ryan at his office. He read the old will the email chain and the transfer document Sophia had prepared. He did not raise his voice. He simply said, "This is textbook undue influence. We can file for an emergency injunction this afternoon. It will freeze any attempt to change the deed or move additional funds." I signed the papers he placed in front of me. My hand stayed steady. By the time I returned home, Daniel's car was in the driveway. Sophia's car was parked behind it. They were sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of documents between them. Daniel looked up when I walked in. "You're late. Sophia has been waiting?" I set my bag on the counter. I had a meeting. Sophia smiled the same warm smile she had used since we were teenagers. We were just going over the final details. "It really is the best thing for everyone." I looked at her for a long moment. "How long have you been helping him move money out of the joint account?" The smile stayed on her face for exactly 2 seconds. Then it faltered. Daniel's chair scraped back. "Lauren, that's not." I placed my phone on the table and opened the forwarded email thread. I did not raise my voice. I simply let the messages speak for themselves. Daniel read the first one. His face went still. Sophia reached for the phone. I moved it out of her reach. "You told him I would understand," I said to her. My tone stayed even. "You told him the house should be in the family name. You helped him plan how to make me sign it over." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Daniel stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "This is between us," he said. "You don't get to drag Sophia into it." I looked at him. "She dragged herself in the day she started meeting you behind my back and moving my money." The room went quiet. Outside, a car drove past on the small town street. The sound felt very far away. Daniel's voice dropped. "You're going to regret this?" I picked up my phone. "I already filed the injunction this morning. The accounts are frozen. The deed cannot be changed without a court order. You can explain the transfers to the judge." Sophia's face had gone pale. She looked at Daniel, then at me, then back at the phone still open on the table. I turned and walked out the back door onto the porch. I sat on the top step again. The afternoon sun was warm on my face. Inside, I could hear their voices rising, then falling. I did not go back in. Ryan called 20 minutes later. The judge signed the order. "Nothing moves without your signature or a hearing. You did the right thing." I thanked him and ended the call. I stayed on the porch as the sun dropped lower. The house behind me was no longer quiet. It was the sound of two people realizing the plan they had built together had just collapsed. I did not feel triumph. I did not feel grief. I felt the same cold, steady clarity I had felt the night before. The truth was out. Everything else would follow from there. The voices inside rose once, then dropped into low, urgent murmurs. I stayed on the porch until the front door opened and closed. Sophia's car pulled away without headlights. I went back into the kitchen. Daniel sat alone at the table, the stack of transfer papers still in front of him. His jaw was tight. "You froze everything he said, no question in it." "You really think that stops this?" I set my bag on the counter. "It stops the transfers. It stops the deed change. That is what it does." He gave a short laugh, cold and thin. "Sophia warned me you would do something like this. She said you have always been like this when you feel cornered." I looked at him. "Sophia helped you move $5,000 without telling me. She helped you draft papers to take the house my mother left only in my name. You can call that whatever you want." He stood up. The chair legs scraped hard against the floor. "My parents have been waiting for years for you to stop treating this place like it belongs only to you. They have every right to expect something stable. You have shut them out of every decision since the day we moved in. Family events, repairs, even the taxes. You made it clear we were not welcome in our own home. I did not answer. I walked past him to the hallway and opened the drawer where I kept old mail. I pulled out the folder I had not touched in months. Inside were printed copies of group texts from 2 years earlier. My husband's mother had started a thread about selling a piece of the adjoining land. My husband had replied. Sophia had been added to the thread 3 messages in. My name was never there. I carried the folder back to the kitchen and set it on the table. You discussed selling the land with your mother and with Sophia. You never mentioned it to me. He glanced at the pages. His face did not change. It was a family matter. You would have said no. You always say no. I nodded once. That is the point. I picked up my phone and called the number Ryan Cooper had given me earlier that day. Patricia Lang answered on the second ring. She was the attorney he trusted for these situations. I told her what had happened in the last 24 hours. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "The injunction is already in place. I can file the motion to show cause tomorrow. It will force them to explain the transfers in court. Bring every message and every document you have." I thanked her and ended the call. Daniel had not moved. He watched me set the phone down. "You are going to drag my parents into court over this," he said. His voice stayed low. "You know what that will do to them in this town? Everyone will talk." I met his eyes. They can explain the messages to the judge, so can Sophia. He stepped closer. The cold sarcasm returned. "You think you are the only one who can play this game?" "I have already told my mother what you did to the accounts. She is not surprised. She said you have always put yourself first. Even your best friend agrees." I felt the words land, but my face stayed still. I turned and walked back out to the porch. The boards were cool under my feet. I sat on the top step and opened the email thread again on my phone. One message from Sophia to my husband dated 4 months earlier read, "If she starts asking questions, we tell everyone she has been difficult with the family for years. It will make the transfers look like protection, not theft." I read it once. Then I forwarded it to Patricia Lane with the subject line, "Additional evidence for tomorrow." My phone rang almost immediately. It was Ryan Cooper. Lauren Patricia just looped me in. "We are filing first thing. One more thing. An old client of mine from the next town over called me tonight. He said Sophia approached him last month about listing the house quietly. She told him you were unstable and the family needed to move fast. He turned her down, but he thought I should know." I thanked him and ended the call. The new information settled without noise. Sophia had not only advised my husband, she had started spreading the story in the small circle of people who handled property in the area. Inside the house, Daniel's footsteps moved upstairs. A door closed. I stayed on the porch. The street was quiet. A single porch light burned 2 houses down. I did not go inside until the sky started to turn gray. The next 2 days moved in straight lines. I met Patricia Lane at her office. She was in her 50s direct and did not waste words. She filed the motion and scheduled the hearing for the following week. Ryan reviewed every transfer and confirmed the pattern. Small amounts always, when I was at work, always routed through an account Sophia controlled on paper. Patricia added the messages and the attempted listing to the filing. My husband did not come home those nights. He sent one text. "My mother wants to speak with you before the weekend. The family is already choosing sides." I did not reply. On Thursday evening, I sat on the porch again. The family celebration weekend was 2 days away. Every year, my husband's parents hosted a small gathering at their place on the edge of town. It was the one event no one missed. I had been expected to attend and stay silent while decisions were made around me. This year, the invitation had not come. My phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. It was Sophia. "You are making this worse than it needs to be. Daniel's parents are devastated. They trusted you. If you drop the legal stuff, we can still fix this quietly." I read it twice. Then I took a screenshot and sent it to Patricia Lang. She replied within minutes, "Do not respond. This is exactly what we need." I set the phone face down on the step. The air had cooled. I could hear the low hum of the highway 2 miles away. Inside the house, the lights stayed off. Daniel had not returned. Friday morning, Patricia called. The hearing is set for next Wednesday. In the meantime, stay away from any family events. If they approach you, record it if you can. One more thing. Ryan's old client came forward again. He has a recording of Sophia offering him a cut if he helped push the sale through quickly. He is willing to sign an affidavit. I thanked her and ended the call. The second new piece of evidence sat in my inbox like a weight. I forwarded it without opening the file. That afternoon, I drove to the small grocery store on Main Street to pick up basics. The woman behind the counter, someone I had seen for years but never spoken to at length, looked at me for a second longer than usual. She did not smile. She rang up the items and said they only heard there was some trouble at your place. I paid in cash and left. The story was already moving through the town. When I returned home, Daniel's car was in the driveway again. He was on the porch this time, leaning against the railing. He did not look angry. He looked tired in a way that did not reach his eyes. My mother called, he said. She wants you at the gathering tomorrow night. She said if you do not come, it will look like you are hiding something. The whole family will be there. Sophia, too. I set the grocery bag down. I am not going. He pushed off the railing. You do not get to decide that anymore. This is bigger than you and me now. People are talking. If you want any chance of keeping anything, you show up and act like an adult. I looked at him. You and Sophia already decided what I should act like. I'm done performing it. He stepped closer. His voice dropped into the same flat tone he had used the first night. You think freezing the money protects you? It does not. My parents have friends on the town council. They have friends at the bank. You are making enemies you cannot afford in a place this small. I did not step back. Then they can explain the messages and the transfers to the judge next week. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he gave another short laugh. Sophia was right about you. You really do not care who you hurt as long as you win. He walked past me into the house. The door closed behind him. I stayed on the porch. The sun was low. The light hit the wooden boards at an angle that made every crack visible. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Patricia Lang. Lauren, one of the messages you sent earlier, just got a reply from Sophia's old assistant. The assistant quit last month. She kept copies of every email between Sophia and your husband. She is willing to turn them over. There is more than we thought. Call me when you can. I read the message twice. Then I looked at the closed door behind me. The house was silent again. The family celebration was less than 24 hours away. Daniel's mother had demanded my presence. Sophia would be there. The town was already choosing sides. I opened the banking app one more time. The frozen accounts showed zero movement. I closed it. The cold clarity from the first night had not left. It had only settled deeper. I stayed on the porch until the streetlights came on. Then I went inside, locked the door behind me, and sat at the kitchen table with the folder of old messages. I read through them again one by one until every line was familiar. The truth was already in the pages. The rest would come out when it needed to. I arrived at my husband's parents' house just after 7 on Saturday evening. The family celebration had already started. I parked at the end of the gravel drive and walked in without knocking. Margaret, my husband's mother, stood near the kitchen doorway. She looked at me for a long second, then nodded once and turned away. Daniel and Sophia were already there, standing close together near the long table. Several other relatives filled the room, their conversations dropping when I entered. Daniel crossed the room first. His voice stayed low, and even the same tone he had used every night that week. You decided to show up. I told them you would. They said you were too proud to face what you started. I set my bag on a chair. I came because your mother asked. That is all. Sophia stepped forward with the same warm expression she had used for years. Lauren, we can still fix this before it goes any further. Everyone here just wants the family to stay together. The legal stuff is only making it worse for all of us. I looked at her. You helped move money out of accounts that were not yours. You helped draft papers to take a house that was never in your name. You told people in town I was unstable. That is what made it worse." Daniel's face tightened. "You are not going to stand here and accuse Sophia in front of my family. She was trying to protect what we built." I opened the folder I had carried in and placed the printed messages on the table. The top page showed the thread where Sophia had written about making me look difficult so the transfers would seem necessary. I did not raise my voice. "These are the messages between you and Sophia from the last 8 months. They show the plan to pressure me into signing and the story you were already spreading." Margaret moved closer. She picked up the page without asking. Her eyes moved across the words. The room stayed quiet while she read. Daniel reached for the papers. "Those are private. You had no right to bring them here." I did not move my hand. "They stopped being private the day you used them to try to take the house my mother left only in my name." Sophia's smile had disappeared. She looked at Daniel, then at the pages, then back at me. "You are twisting everything. We were trying to help the family. You have always shut everyone out." My phone vibrated on the table. Patricia Lang's name appeared on the screen. I answered and put the call on speaker without asking permission. Patricia's voice came through clearly. "Lauren, the affidavit from Sophia's former assistant just arrived. She kept every email. There is a recording of Sophia offering a commission to a local real estate contact. If he helped push the sale through quickly, the contact is willing to confirm it. I'm sending the full package to the court clerk now. The hearing next week will include all of it." The room stayed silent for several seconds after the call ended. Margaret set the printed message down. She looked at Daniel. "You went to Sophia instead of coming to us. You moved money that did not belong to you. You let her tell people your wife was the problem." Daniel's voice sharpened. "Mom, you do not understand how she has been. She has controlled everything since her mother died. The house, the accounts, every decision. Sophia was the only one willing to help me push back." Margaret did not answer him. She turned to Sophia. "You were her friend since you were girls. You helped him take from her. In this town that will not be forgotten." Sophia opened her mouth and closed it. She looked around the room. No one met her eyes for long. I picked up the folder. The accounts stay frozen. The deed stays in my name. I filed the motion to show cause this morning. The court will decide what happens to the transfers. I'm filing for separation next week. That is the boundary." Daniel stepped closer. His voice dropped into the cold sarcasm he had used from the beginning. "You really think you can just walk away from the family and keep everything my parents have friends here? People will not side with the woman who dragged her husband's name through court over a house she did not even earn herself." I met his eyes. "The messages show who earned what. The affidavit will show the rest. You can explain it to the judge." He stared at me for another moment. Then he turned and walked out the back door. The screen door slammed once behind him. Sophia stayed where she was. Her face had gone pale. She looked at Margaret, then at the rest of the room, then at me. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said. I closed the folder. "You meant exactly what the messages say." She turned and followed Daniel outside. The door closed again. The remaining relatives stayed quiet. Margaret picked up one more page from the table, read it, and set it down. She did not look at me when she spoke. "You should go. This is not going to be fixed tonight." I nodded. I picked up my bag and walked out the front door without saying goodbye to anyone else. The gravel crunched under my shoes. I drove back to the house in silence. The porch light was still on when I pulled into the drive. I sat on the top step for a long time. The night air was cool. Inside the house, the lights stayed off. I did not go in right away. I thought about the messages, the affidavit, the way Margaret had turned away from her son without raising her voice. The truth had done the work. I had only placed the pages on the table. The following Wednesday, the hearing lasted less than an hour. Patricia presented the messages, the bank records, the attempted secret listing, and the affidavit from Sophia's former assistant. Daniel did not contest the facts. He sat with his attorney and answered the judge's questions in short sentences. The judge ordered the accounts returned to my name alone and issued a temporary order preventing any further transfers or attempts to change the deed. A full hearing on the separation was set for the next month. Sophia lost 2 clients in the following week. One of them called Ryan Cooper directly and asked if he could recommend someone else. Ryan told me later that the story had already moved through the small circle of people who handled property in the area. No one wanted to work with the woman who had helped a husband try to take his wife's house while calling her unstable. Daniel moved out 2 days after the hearing. He did not take anything that was not already in his name. He left a single note on the kitchen counter. "You won. I hope it was worth it." I threw the note away without answering. Margaret called once the week after. She asked if I was all right. I told her I was. She did not ask about Daniel. She said only that the family would not be having the usual gathering next year. I thanked her and ended the call. I did not hear from her again. I kept working with Ryan on the small accounts that needed help. Patricia handled the separation filing. The house stayed in my name. The adjoining land stayed with it. I did not sell any of it. I did not need to. 6 weeks after the hearing, I sat on the porch again. The morning was clear. I held a cup of coffee that had gone cold. The street was quiet. No one from the family had come by. No messages from Sophia had arrived since the day she left the gathering. The truth had moved through the town the way small truths always do. It had not required me to raise my voice or chase anyone. It had only required that I stop protecting the version of the story they wanted told. I had spent years letting decisions happen around me because I thought keeping the peace mattered more than the peace itself. My husband and my best friend had counted on that habit. They had built their plan on the assumption that I would eventually sign whatever they placed in front of me to avoid conflict. When I placed the messages on the table instead, the plan collapsed on its own weight. The exclusion they had practiced for years became visible to the people they had tried to use against me. I chose the boundary. I chose the house that carried my mother's name and no one else's. I chose to let the legal process and the truth finish what they had started. The marriage ended. The friendship ended. The quiet pressure that had shaped every family gathering for years ended with it. What remained was the house, the work I knew how to do, and the clear fact that I no longer had to measure my choices against what would keep other people comfortable. Sometimes the right choice is to stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided you are the problem. Sometimes the right choice is to let the documents and the records speak while you walk away. I did both. The new chapter did not feel like victory in the way stories usually describe it. It felt like the absence of the weight I had carried without noticing how heavy it had become. I trusted myself to carry only what was mine. That was enough. Thank you for listening to my story. Drop support if you needed this.